guys, it's Stephanie, and I just wanted to do a quick November wrap up over the very few books I read in the month of November. It's unfortunate because I had really big plans for November. It was nonfiction November, and I had so many great buddy reads planned, but I just got hit with the biggest reading slump ever. And it happens, it's fine. It's a part of life, especially when you go through a whole year with a very rigid and scheduled reading schedule. Burnout is bound to happen, and unfortunately it hit me really hard last month. I did manage to get 3 really great books read, so let's talk about that. First one I wanted to talk about was the only book I read for nonfiction November, and that was Colin Dickey's Ghostland. The title is Ghostland, an American History and Haunted Places, where Colin Dickey has traveled to all of these different locations that have a reputation for being haunted, like the House of Seven Gables and the Winchester Mystery House, and has really gone by, and in each chapter that he talks about them, talks about the urban legend and really tries to separate the fact from fiction, and then really goes into what actually happened and the history, and just really goes into a little bit of commentary on ghost stories and the nature of ghost stories and how they come to be and the necessity for telling them and if the ghost story will survive in this age of information. And I thought it was absolutely great and fascinating. Also, Bree Hill did a very fantastic review of it, so I will link that down below. You should definitely check it out because she also read it, and I thought she had some great thoughts on it. Second book I read, long overdue, but I finally read Love in the Time of Cholera, and I say long overdue because I read 100 Years of Solitude like in early college, and it became my favorite book, and since then, I haven't read anything else by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So Love in the Time of Cholera is about this young couple who are passionately in love, and they write love letters back and forth. Their relationship is forbidden, and the father breaks it off, makes the girl break up with the young man. She then chooses to marry this very wealthy doctor of high status. They get married, they have kids together, they live this long life together. In the first chapter, the doctor dies, and at his funeral, basically this woman's old boyfriend comes marching into the funeral and declares that he had never stopped loving her, even when she went off and decided to marry this doctor. So it's about the complicated nature of that relationship, and it of course goes back and talks about the relationship itself and then what both people did during that span, during all of those decades, because these characters are both in their 70s now. It was very interesting. A lot of people, Oprah included, said that this is one of the most romantic stories ever, and I don't believe that. I thought it was, I don't know, if you're a person who was like really adamantly Team Edward, you might find this romantic. I found it a little stalkery. I don't think being obsessed with someone is the same thing as being in love with them, so that really took me out of it. I just wasn't buying this love story. That isn't the whole book, though. There is so much in this book that was great, and I think even if you're like me and you don't really buy into this romance, that it's not going to ruin the book for you. Of course, it had excellent writing, which was what I loved about Gabriel Garcia Marquez in the first place. So it had that. It had the beautiful writing. It had these beautiful tropical settings in Colombia, talking about all these mango trees and banana leaves. It's beautiful. And I loved it. And it had that. But what it didn't have, that 100 Years of Solitude had so much of, was just this elegant magical realism. There was very little magical realism in this. And he is an excellent storyteller. He doesn't need that, but it is what I loved about the other one that this one didn't have. I still think this was a great book. His writing is just so beautiful. And this, of course, it's called Love in the Time of Cholera, so this is during a time when cholera was rampant. And if you know, cholera is not a glamorous thing to go through, but just, it's very funny because he is such a beautiful writer that even as he is talking about all these horrible symptoms of this disease, you can look it up later, his writing is still just so gorgeous. but I love it. Definitely want to, he is an author. I definitely want to go through and read everything he has written. I ended up rating it 4 stars. Loved it. Loved the beautiful writing. Of course, these characters seemed real and came to life, but it just wasn't quite a love story for me. And that was just such a big part of the story that, it didn't ruin it, but I just wasn't a fan. And then the last book I listened to as an audiobook, and it was very spontaneous, but I read Kitchens of the Great Midwest, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't know that it was going to be like a story kind of told in short story. So it of course takes place in the Midwest, in Minnesota, and it goes through a character's life, a girl named Eva, and each chapter or each short story is from a different person's perspective. It is never from Eva's perspective. So as you're growing up, you see it through her parents' perspective. Then one chapter is a high school boyfriend, one chapter is a professional rival, and it was just very interesting. Absolutely loved it. I was at work like tearing up and laughing out loud. It was so emotional, but it never felt manipulative. I just absolutely adored it. I felt like it was just what I needed for this book slump. It had so much charm. It was about food, and it just felt so warm and homey. I am definitely recommending this book. I absolutely adored it. So let me know if you've read any of the books that I just talked about. I would love to hear your opinions. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.